Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room, a show that tries to bring you some of life's little pleasures, lots of news and views from Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, across the world. And boy, it's great to be here. I'm Robin Adair, and we are in our beautiful Zoom offices right across town from each other. And speaking of beautiful, my co-host from the most, the Croatian sensation, the man that people line the streets to cheer for in certain impoverished countries, John Jurisic, who is a real beauty, and, well, today I'm sure has come loaded for bear.
Oh, yeah. Always loaded for bear. I love the show. Thanks for the compliment. Aside from me giving myself compliments, that's the only place I get them from. So thank you. That's great. But you know what? Since I am totally loaded for bear, let's fire out our first volley at a recent national opinion poll. According to the latest Abacus survey, Canadian Conservative Party would win an election if it was held today. Hey, what do you think about that? In fact, the Tories even hold a small majority.
They can have as many as 4 seats in a lead, and really the Tories need a majority. They have to have a majority government if they're going to govern, because there's not many of the other parties that would support them. So let's take a look now at the numbers of this poll. It's the Conservative Party, Canadian Conservative Party, on top at 176 seats. And then after that, we have the Liberal Party of Canada at 94 seats. And they remain strong in the Maritimes, Montreal, and some parts of southern Ontario, although the Tories are catching up in parts of Ontario as well. The Bloc Québécois hold 39 seats, which is strong in Quebec, but doesn't make any difference across the rest of the country. The NDP, which always looks so strong out here on Vancouver Island and in British Columbia, or at least parts of British Columbia, well, that doesn't translate across the rest of Canada. They have 32 seats, and the Greens can count on 2 seats, including Elizabeth May in North Saanich and the Islands. And of course, the election is not taking place today. That poll would be what it would be if we had it right now. And these are not good trend lines for the Liberals. They have a lot of work to do. Justin Trudeau's personal popularity has been shrinking, and it'll take a real uptick in the economy, I believe, to improve his fortune. Sky-high housing prices, higher rents, higher interest rates, higher prices on virtually everything. It's not helping, and the Conservatives are making inroads.
Yeah, they certainly are. And what's fascinating to me is that they're actually providing solutions. Something that you and I have been chatting about on this show is sadly lacking in our country. It'll be interesting to see if Pierre Poilievre and his Conservatives can take advantage of this situation. Will the Conservative brand sell to mainstream Canadians? Well, one huge thing that will help their cause is this increase in the national debt. It's exploding, especially since the pandemic. It exploded during the pandemic. You could rationalize that there are reasons for that. But since the pandemic, okay, Justin Trudeau's government has borrowed record amounts of money year after year. And paying the debt gets steeper with every interest rate hike. Carson Binda from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation has been Johnny on the spot with this roving debt clock, and his message is very clear.
It took British Columbia 145 years to rack up a debt of $44 billion. It only took Premier David Eby and John Horgan 7 years to double that. Right now, our provincial debt's standing at about $98.5 billion and rising by $1,000 per second. Interest payments on the debt this year alone are going to be around $3.3 billion. That's enough money to build 2 brand new hospitals the size of the new hospital in Surrey. So we at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation decided to send Premier David Eby a message he can't ignore. We are standing right now outside his constituency office in Vancouver Point Grey with our debt clock showing the provincial debt in real time.
So the Canadian Taxpayers Federation certainly holding government's feet to the fire when it comes to debt and public spending. We're going to have Carson Binda in the Rumble Room in another week to further talk about this growing problem. All of that said, Premier David Eby is certainly showing a lot of acumen right now. He's just let the world know in his next budget he's going to have a $700 million surplus. And you're saying, how is that possible? Well, governments of all political stripes for years have found ways to move money around the ledger. And of course, they throw it behind crown corporations. You don't see the debt from BC Ferries, for example. It also doesn't show up in other big expenditures through agencies like health authorities. And so that's the way of the political world, and that certainly is the way right now. A new Angus Reid poll is just out. The Eby government is still holding a substantial lead over Kevin Falcon and BC United. What does this all add up to? Well, we also have a budget surplus. We have further announcements of housing announcements coming, lots of money expenditures for that as well. All good news. Is this perhaps leading up to something around an election, a snap election? After all, David Eby has not developed his own mandate. He came in after John Horgan. He'd love to go to the electorate and get his own mandate in an election. It's a big temptation. I wouldn't bet against it. And Johnny will certainly be keeping an eye on it.
Now, on the flip side, of course, the province also has a lot of issues it needs to address before facing the public again in an election campaign. And according to the folks down at the legislature, who really knows when that's going to happen? But high on the list is the doctor's shortage. Last week, we were joined by Victoria family doctor Jennifer Lush. She's concerned about the chronic doctor's shortage, as are we all, and feels the fix is far too slow and ineffective. For example, the online registry for people to get a family doctor is operating. However, thousands and thousands, perhaps even worse, of people still do not have a doctor. Well, here's some viewer feedback in reaction to some of these issues. David writes, "Gee, what a surprise. We haven't been training enough doctors, nurses, and other medical staff for years. Until we do, nothing will change. Not unlike the fact we have not been building enough housing for years. The only surprise is that our leaders somehow expect things to magically get better."
We also heard from one of our regular viewers, Roger, and he chimes in, "Gentlemen, keep pushing on the healthcare issues where the provincial government can take specific measures to assist the doctor shortages. Dr. Lush is articulate, informative, and needs to be listened to by Dix and Eby."
That is for sure. It's worth noting that some people have had positive outcomes getting doctors through the online sign-up, right? There's another side. So we saw this review. We've had some great news, and we're very relieved. We were without a family doctor for several years. A year ago, we added our names to the online website. Then a short time ago, we received a call directing us to a family doctor who is accepting patients.
So, John, in some cases, obviously, this new system is working. The question is it working fast enough? And I think a lot of people are concerned that it is not. And the doctors need to keep up their call to action. So do the third-party advocates like BC Healthcare Matters. Camille Curry and her group have done a great job of putting this issue on the front pages. They need to keep up the pressure.
Pressure needs to continue, Robin, on so many issues and files within our community, like homelessness, tent cities, and downtown crime. A new task force led by Victoria Mayor Marian Alto is digging into this thorny issue. And of course, police have a major role to play.
Absolutely, John. And it's been a contentious issue for some time in the city centers. And of course, that's where most of the crime takes place, and that's where most of the tax money directed toward police officers is being directed, and that's why there's so much pressure. It's costing a lot of money. And the problem is, in Victoria, we have the Victoria Police up against it, while numerous other forces like Saanich, Oak Bay, Central Saanich, the RCMP on the West Shore and up in Sydney, Well, they are not paying attention to the downtown, and those taxpayers don't have to pay for those problems. And there's been new calls recently for a regional police force. So we thought, well, let's talk to Esquimalt Mayor Barb Desjardins, because Esquimalt has been involved in a joint Esquimalt Victoria police force for the last decade. They're not happy. Esquimalt now wants out of this deal. So now, in the face of all of this, what are the ramifications? Let's zoom in, Barb Desjardins. And now joining us in the Victoria Rumble Room once again, Esquimalt's #1 mayor. Well, she is the mayor of Esquimalt, Barb Desjardins, and great to have you on the show again.
Oh, thank you for having me again.
Well, we have some questions we'd like to get into that we believe have a lot of ramifications around the province of BC. And unfortunately, they start with unpleasant stats. We hear that Victoria, that's the city of Victoria, is nearly 60 points higher than the provincial average when it comes to crime severity. And we also know, of course, that Esquimalt and Victoria share a police force, but don't share the same crime rate. Esquimalt's crime rate is much, much lower. And there are, of course, renewed calls going around for a new regional police force at the same time that Esquimalt wants to pull out of its current deal with the police force in Victoria, some sort of a new agreement, and nothing's been decided there. But do you feel in some ways right now, with what Esquimalt wants at the same time as these calls for regional police, that you're fighting against the tide?
Well, we have always highly supported the idea of regionalized policing because in 2002, we were supposed to be, as Esquimalt and Victoria, the first step toward regionalized policing. That did not occur, and 20 years later, Esquimalt has, through many iterations and many agreements, found out the statistics around crime severity, which is one measurement, but all sorts of measurements that suggest that this is not an equitable partnership. If you want to move to regionalization, that would be better for all parties concerned right now in terms of Esquimalt and Victoria. But how long do we have to wait for that? And if that's not going to occur for many years to come, then we still have to make a change.
First of all, Barb, fantastic to have you back on the program. We've had you numerous times in the early days, and now the Rumble Room has got a lot more Rumblers watching it. So great to have you back. Wanting to follow up now on the answer that you just gave a minute or two ago, it's important to note that you co-chair the police board. Okay, I think most of us are aware of that. And so you're therefore well aware of the problems of downtown policing. Now the provincial government is making noises. Special all-party committee report made 11 recommendations, including amalgamating police services that Robin referenced, you referenced in your answer. Let's dig a little deeper, please. If all the South Island police forces came under one umbrella, you indicated that might be a good a scenario for Esquimalt. Is that actually the one that you would prefer?
We have always said regionalized policing would be the very best. However, again, I'll go back to the report recommended regionalization where there was interest and in a region like ours. I don't think there's enough interest. And clearly we heard after the report came out that there were RCMP areas that were very happy with their policing. And we have really not heard strong messages from any of the other municipal police forces that suggest they have any more interest now than they have over the last number of years. And my worry is that until then, why does Esquimalt continue to be the only one supporting downtown policing and the challenges that the whole region should be either supporting or let us loose and let Victoria, have their own strategy, which I know that Mayor Alto is working on as we speak.
Well, I want to talk about that for a moment, but I also want to put a caveat here that we're not trying to have the Mayor of Esquimalt suggest that she would have advice for the City of Victoria, how they're going to handle Pandora above and beyond your role with the police board. And they are holding meetings right now. They're trying to come up with a strategy. What I'd like to get your thoughts on is the strategy that they've been discussing. How realistic do you think it is on a provincial-wide basis? Because they even touch on the fact that this isn't just a Victoria problem. It's a regional problem. It's a problem in Nanaimo. It's a problem in Vancouver. Big problem in other cities like Prince George and the Okanagan. So that it's not just locally here. It's not just locally on Pandora. But one of the scenarios that was offered up to us, and it was strongly advocated by Ian Beatty, he says that there are 4, he thinks, good strategies that have been pushed forward, at least in the debate in Victoria, including the new intensive outreach program, new housing and sheltering options, mental illness and addiction services, and support for the police and courts to incarcerate criminals. So do you think this is really new? We put this up a couple of weeks ago. We've had some pushback from some of our viewers saying, well, what's new about this? This has been around for a long time and it's not gathering any traction. Do you think this is a new strategy, or do you think this is a strategy that could actually work?
Well, I think that those 4 pillars are very, very clear and required. In terms of the challenges that we have, and it's not just our region, it's around the province, is we need greater coordination. Municipalities look after policing, but the province looks after mental health. And to a certain extent, we both look after housing. It really has to be a joint process because until you get, and unless you get the province and all of the players coming together on this to help individuals as individuals with their own circumstances, we will continue to see problems. I think that the reason there is so much more discussion about it again, and perhaps a little bit of action around it, is that really the pandemic exacerbated everything. And now as we're coming out of the pandemic, we're kind of going, okay, this has really been problematic. And we're starting to see crime rise again, and the challenges of coming out of COVID, where we are not getting the recruits that we need for policing. Everything's tied up together. And unless we really pay attention, you can put somebody in housing, but if you don't put these resources that support them around them, it won't work. Police will end up having to go to a call, but they're not trained in mental health. So that has to be connected with island health. And so all of those pieces have to come together as a wraparound for each individual because they're all different. Everyone's situation is different.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. Okay, let's move away from political governance and now into the courts. Recently, our Prime Minister said the federal government isn't responsible for the housing crisis, yet Justin Trudeau's government is responsible, obviously, for the federal courts and going after drug trafficking and serious offenses. Is it not now time to end this catch and release policy? And do you think Ottawa is prepared to get tougher and start prosecuting and putting criminals into jail?
Oh, if I had the answer to that, I'd be the lottery winner, wouldn't I? I think that we have all seen the challenges with the catch and release methodology here. And communities are really suffering by it. I mean, somebody gets arrested and let out on bail, and they go back out and commit another crime while they're waiting for their hearing. So it isn't working. I know that the premiers have done what they can to try and improve that federal law. But the reality is municipalities, communities are the ones that are suffering and having to pick up the pieces from both levels, not giving the support. And, you know, I'm going to go back to my old rant. You know, municipalities get 8 cents on the dollar of taxes that are collected in Canada. How do you expect us to do all the social problems, as well as the policing, as well as the housing, with 8 cents of the tax dollar?
When we were speaking to Barb, we also thought we'd poke into another issue of note. When the outfall for the sewage treatment plant was placed at Macaulay Point, Esquimalt received compensation money, quite a bit. They've built a beautiful facility at Kinsman Park, moved forward with the town center, and had the blessing of taxpayers to build a new $40 million public safety building for police and fire. Nothing's happened. So we asked the mayor to update this story.
Unfortunately, our public safety building, as of earlier this year, was coming in at $62 million, which is almost double the cost, with a sense of escalating costs continuing at 1% to 2% per month. And because of that, we had to take a revisioning step and figure out how to go forward. We've already borrowed money. We would have had to go back to the community with a referendum or an alternative approval process. Council didn't feel comfortable in doing that. But what we've done is taken a look again, and we realized that we can build a fire hall and emergency services building within the budget that we have. It may be an opportunity for police station, but the good news is right now, Vic PD are enjoying the first floor of our town hall, and they're very comfortable there.
Barb Desjardins is forecasting that they'll be breaking ground on this new safety building by next May, and we'll certainly keep an eye on that. But for now, John, it's time to wrap up another Rumble Room.
So many issues, so much stuff. Love reviewing it. Thank you, Robin. You know, as do so many other people. And we really want to thank you. Thank you all for watching us. And there's so many ways that new viewers and existing viewers can follow our program. Be easily a regular subscriber on YouTube. Press that little button, subscribe. You can become a friend of the Victoria Rumble Room by joining our group on Facebook. And you can also join our Victoria Rumble Room news and views site for other stories and opinions, particularly if you would like to provide input. Great place to do that. We're also featured on Facebook, YouTube, YouTube Shorts, X, formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Thank you again for following our show and becoming one of the 1.2 plus million cumulative people who've tuned into the Rumble Room over the past 2 years. That's it for me. Catch my breath. I'm your Croatian sensation, Johnny Jurisic.
And I stand by my opening statement. You are a beauty, John. I'm Robin Adair, and rumble on.